Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in. In this video I'm gonna make a review comparison between the new Mavic Air 2 and the Mavic 2 Pro, and if it still makes sense buying the Mavic 2 Pro considering the specs of the new Mavic Air 2. Let's go! Hi guys, I'm Paul. I'm a German filmmaker and my channel is all about filmmaking, tech reviews, but also about DaVinci Resolve tutorials. So if that's something that you're into, consider subscribe. I would really appreciate that. Thank you. So I had the chance testing the new Mavic Air 2 against my DJI Mavic 2 Pro. I've used the Mavic Air 1 before and also the Mavic Pro 1. So I have a quite good understanding of how these drones work and what have improved about the past. So let's start with size and portability. Still, the Mavic Air 2 is smaller than the Mavic 2 Pro, but the controller or the control unit is bigger than on the previous models, so keep that in mind. But also compared to the Mavic Air 1, the size did increase so far, so it's not as compact as the Mavic Air 1, but still it's more compact than the Mavic Pro 2. But you're gonna keep in mind that the control unit is much bigger now. But speaking of that, that makes totally sense from my perspective, because it has a way better feel in your hand and you have the phone on top, which makes it way easier to watch. And also with the old controller you also always had the problem to fitting in that phone, and if you use something like a case or something like that, it wouldn't perfectly fit. So that was always an issue and you always have to look kind of down. But the controller was more compact, so that's the downside. But anyway, I think I like the new controller, so DJI did a step in the right direction from my perspective. So let's talk about the most important thing. What's the picture quality look like from both of these drones? I think personally the Mavic Air 2, the picture is very over sharpened. It looks very digital sharpened, whereas the Mavic 2 Pro image looks more organically. Also considering the noise, the Mavic Air 2 has a way higher bass noise level. So if you look like in the shadows or in fine detail areas, it looks more noisy, whereas you don't have this problem basically with the Mavic 2 Pro. But that's due to the fact that here we have a bigger sensor than in the Mavic Air 2, and here we also have D-Log-M, which gives a 10-bit color depth, which is a really cool feature which the Mavic Air 2 doesn't have. But looking straight onto the image, it appears to be that the Mavic Air 2 is sharper, but I think the Mavic Pro 2 on the other hand looks more cinematic. It has a kind of softness to it, but I really like that the image is more organically, so it is not as over digitally sharpened. So I think the image looks better on the Mavic Pro 2. I also like the feature that we have here, a 4K crop mode, which gives us a different field of view. I use that feature quite often when I want to film a building and I physically can't go any closer to the building. I use that mode and it gives me a different perspective. So it looks like we are having then a 40mm lens on the drone, which is kind of cool, and I really like that feature, which we also don't have on the Mavic Air 2. But speaking of field of view, the Mavic Air 2 has actually a wider field of view. I think it's around 24mm, and the Mavic Pro 2 has a 28mm field of view. So if you're flying in tight spaces, I think the Mavic Air 2 makes much more sense, because it's also much smaller but also has a wider field of view. So in this case, but everything else for me, that's not a bummer, because when I'm in the air I always have enough space to film the objects that I want to film. So for me personally, that's not a deal breaker at all. talking about picture quality, we also have to take in consideration the low light performance of both of these drones. I think both performed really great. We tested both at ISO 1600 because that's the highest ISO setting that the Mavic Air 2 offers. The Mavic 2 Pro, on the other hand, can go up to ISO 6400. Looking at ISO 1600, I think the Mavic 2 Pro looked a little bit better, but I was really surprised that both just had noise, no color artifacts or something like that. So in this perspective, I was really surprised, but yeah, this goes pretty much to the Mavic 2 Pro, and it also has the option to film in complete darkness with ISO 6400. And if you use Resolve like I do with the noise reduction, I guess you can record pretty stunning images even at night with this drone. And that leads me to frame rates. The Mavic Air 2 offers 4K 60p and also 2K 120p, whereas the Mavic Pro 2 just has 2.7K up to 60 frames per second. Personally, for me, I never thought anything above 30 frames because drone footage is always pretty slow, and I find myself more often speeding it up in post than vice versa. But if you are shooting a lot of stuff with fast movement, it might make sense for you to choose the Mavic Air 2 because of the 120p and also the 4K 60p. But generally speaking, for me personally, I never used 60p at all. So let's talk about the features that the app has, and like the tracking features and all that stuff. The DJI Mavic 2 Pro also features that, also features a hyperlapse mode, which is quite handy. The Mavic Air 2 has actually an 8K hyperlapse mode, which doesn't work up to this point. I think DJI will fix that in a firmware update. But anyway, you have both of these features in both drones, but the Mavic Air 2 is quite much more advanced because the tracking functionality of the Mavic Air 2 is just mind-blowing, because we tracked the flying Mavic 2 Pro and it was able to circle around that small object here in a very fast time, which you can't do manually. I personally always fly manually, so I don't really care about this mode. But if you're not as familiar with flying a drone, these features come in really handy. So I like that DJI has implemented that. But that's also the kind of evolution of technology. The Mavic Air is much newer, so it has more new software features, which the Mavic 2 Pro doesn't have. But I think it will be the same with the new DJI Mavic Pro 3 when it comes out. So basically, I think, if you are into these kinds of features, that is really much more advanced. But anyway, it's not bad on the Mavic 2 Pro. It's just more advanced and better on the Mavic Air 2. Let's talk about the picture profiles that each of these drones offer. The Mavic 2 Pro has D-Log M, has HLG, and the standard picture profile. Standard is really garbage. I wouldn't use it at all. HLG is kind of a mixture between log and a standard picture profile, but I personally don't like that. I always shoot in D-Log M because that unlocks the 10-bit color depth, and that is, I think, by far the best feature that the Mavic 2 Pro offers. The image looks really, really great, and it has a lot of dynamic range. So I really like that the camera offers that, but there's also a downside because the camera doesn't apply any lens correction in camera, so you have a banded horizon every time when you shoot in D-Log M, but you can fix that in post really quickly. For example, in Resolve it's pretty easy, and I think in other editing softwares it's the same. But on the other hand, the Mavic Air 2 has a new HDR feature, which I really like. So the software makes a great job, having enough shadow detail, but also having detail in the sky. So that's basically a perfect situation when you don't want to grade at all the footage. It looks great and has a lot of detail, but it also offers D-Cine-like, which is a little bit of a flat profile, but still it's only 8-bit, and here we have 10-bit, so 10-bit gives you much more smoother gradients between the colors and has a whole lot more of color information. So I would always choose 10-bit color profile on my drone. Speaking about the battery life, I was quite surprised because the Mavic Air 2 has a flight time from about 30 minutes, mostly same as like the Mavic 2 Pro, but in real life the Mavic 2 Pro had to begin landing really early, or compared quite earlier. So when we tested the drones, we didn't do a scientific test, but we started at the same time, and my drone had to go back 5 minutes before. So I think in real world situations there's a difference from 3 to 5 minutes of flight time, and compared to the Mavic Air 1, which has a flight time of 15 minutes. So there the flight time per battery was really short. But on the other hand, considering the Mavic Air 2 and the DJI Mavic 2 Pro, the flight time that you get out of each battery is great, and it's more than enough to do the shots that you want to do. But if you want to look at the pure flight time, then the Mavic Air 2 outperforms actually the Mavic 2 Pro. Let's talk about the settings, and that's the point where the Pro in the Mavic Pro 2 makes really sense, because here we have much more control about everything. We can adjust the gimbal rotation, the smoothness and everything. You have so much more control about the drones. You have so much access to settings that you don't have on the Mavic Air 2. So the Mavic Air 2 is much more limited to that. So, but also it makes it easier. So the menu is very much more intuitive from my perspective than on the Mavic Pro 2. So as I've already said, if you're not as familiar with drones, the Mavic Air 2 would be the much better fit. But yeah, if you want all these settings and all these adjustments, then definitely pick the Mavic 2 Pro. And also a very big feature here, we can adjust the aperture. The Mavic Air 2 has a fixed aperture. Also, this one has you can change the focus, which you can't on the Mavic Air 2. The Mavic Air 2 has a fixed focus to infinity, and here you can also focus on closer objects, which is really cool. But the ability to change the aperture while flying is really great, because when using ND filters and the light outside changes, you basically don't have to land and get another ND filter or something like that, or adjusting the shutter, which you shouldn't do at all. So I basically adjust the aperture, and you don't have this flexibility on the Mavic Air 2, which is a pretty big bummer, I think. So now let's talk about the sensors. The Mavic Pro 2 features sensors to the top, to the side, front, back, and also down. So the Mavic Pro 2 is fully packed with sensors, and I personally really liked it, because my very first drone, which was the Mavic Pro 1, I crashed into a tree while flying sidewards, so making a parallax shot. So that can be really tricky if your drone hasn't sensors which are looking to the side. The Mavic Air 2, on the other hand, has basically all features besides the sensors to the side, which is a pretty bummer, and looking up, which is not that big of a deal for me, but the sensors to the side is a pretty big bummer for me. So that's also a big advantage of the Mavic Pro 2. So last but not least, let's talk about the price. Currently, I can only talk for the German price, but speaking about the Flymore combo, this drone cost you about $800 more. I will link both drones for you down so you can check the latest price. And the question is it really worth it to invest in a Mavic 2 Pro? So if you don't own both of these drones and you never had any experience with any drone, I would really recommend picking up the Mavic Air 2 because it has a great flight range and it basically has everything you need to start out, and it also has a great image quality. But if you have already experiences with drones and you want to take the next bigger step, I would invest in the Mavic Pro 2. If you already have a Mavic Pro 2, does it make sense to kind of upgrade to the Mavic Air 2? I think it totally doesn't make any sense for me, because here you have the adjustable aperture, you have 10-bit color depth, which is really amazing. And only because of the frame rate, only because of you have to use that all the time, that would probably make sense. But anyway, I think in most scenarios the Mavic 2 Pro is more superior to the Mavic Air 2, which is kind of expected, because that's just how DJI markets these drones. This is more a high-end prosumer drone, whereas the Mavic Air 2 is a consumer drone. So always keep that in mind. And so that pretty much wraps it up for me. If you have any further questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate that, and it helps me a lot. So if you have any further questions, just let me know, and I see you in my next video. Cheers!